The release of Journey Together is just days away, and we are nearly coming to a close of our post-rotation preview coverage. But one of the decks that I did want to highlight before we get out of here is Iono's Bellibolt, as it is one of the new and exciting decks that is coming in the new Journey Together set. So let's take a couple of minutes to check out what has been happening with Iono's Bellibolt in Japan. I'm Jet from inthirdperson.com. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let's talk about this new deck archetype. The deck revolves around Iono's Bellibolt EX. It is a stage 1 lightning type Pokemon with 280 HP and 2 retreat. And the big deal with this card is that it has the ability Electro Streamer, where as often as you like during your turn, you may attach a basic lightning energy card from your hand to one of your Iono's Pokemon. And being able to have that type of energy acceleration is nuts. And we're also going to need to use it if we're going to use Bellibolt as an attacker, because its attack is expensive. For 3 lightning and a colorless, Thunderous Bolt does 230 damage, and this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. 230 is a pretty good number. We are taking out a lot of the big basic Pokemon in the game. We're going to fall just a bit short of Raging Bolt and Blood Moon or Saluna, but for the most part, we are taking one-hit KOs on most of the big basics in the game. Not being able to attack again does kind of suck, but we also kind of don't want this as our main attacker of sorts. We are definitely going to be swinging with it based on the lists I've seen in Japan, but it's an okay attacker at best. But yes, the limitation on not being able to attack on the following turn is annoying. I guess you could retreat out and then bring it back in so you could swing on consecutive turns, but most of, if not all of the decks we're looking at don't really have that as part of their game plan. The deck's secondary attacker is Iono's Voltorb. There is an Electrode as well, but it's not very good and no one is playing that card. Instead, we focus on the Voltorb, which is a basic 70 HP, and for 2 colorless energy, Chain Bolt does 20 damage and 20 more damage for each lightning energy attached to your Iono's Pokemon. So ideally, you've got a scenario where you've got a bunch of energy on a Bellibolt and on your Kilowattrel, and Iono's Voltorb could potentially take big KOs on multi-prize Pokemon, or just use it as a single prize attacker on single prize Pokemon to try and keep the prize race even. Yes, this does potentially have one-hit KO power on big multi-prize Pokemon, but you're going to really need to flood the board with energy in order to make this that strong of an attacker. It does punch above its weight oftentimes, just not all the way up to the point where you want it to go. So yeah, it's okay attacker as well. Unfortunately, those are kind of the 2 main attackers in the deck, which kind of fill very specific niches, but it doesn't really have that great of a bread and butter attack, which is why the deck is kind of struggling right now. Iono's Kilowattrel is not that bread and butter attacker that this deck needs, but it's a draw engine that the deck also needs, and a pretty cool one at that. It lets you draw until you have 6 cards in hand if you discard a lightning energy from this Pokemon. Now that does seem kind of weird that, like, hey, I have to discard an energy, so I have to attach an energy, but with the Bellibolt ability, getting the energy on there is no problem, and you can bank it for another time. Like, you can, if you get Iono down to 1, you can still just discard that energy that you've put on a previous turn in order to draw up to 6 cards. And presumably, I think if you've got multiple Kilowattrels in play, you can do this effect multiple times, once per Kilowattrel. So really cool draw power in this deck that also synergizes with Bellibolt attaching all that energy. And there are ways to get the energy back after you discard, so not that big of a deal. Kind of a cool draw engine for this deck to have. And that recovery option I was referring to is Levincia, which allows you to grab 2 basic lightning energy cards from your discard pile and put them back into your hand. So this can be a great way to get that energy that you discarded off the Kilowattrel back into play, or just for whatever reason, get that energy back into your hand for Bellibolt to accelerate wherever you need it to go. Very strong stadium in this deck, and other decks as well, such as Goldengo is running this as well, even though it's not a lightning deck, because it really relies on recovering energy from the discard pile. Here's a look at the most recent metagame in Japan for Journey Together. Now, Japan is in the Heatwave Arena meta now, so this is going to be the last run that was just Journey Together cards, and as you can see here, Bellibolt is not on here, and I think it might have been on this chart in the first week, as players were trying out new decks, and then after that, it completely fell off this chart. Unfortunately, Bellibolt has not been a major player in the tournament space. Not to say that it isn't being played at all. It does have top 16 placements in City League tournaments as recently as a couple days ago, and it does have a total of 62 top 16 appearances since January 25th. However, 62 is pretty low compared to where the other meta decks are. Like, for example, we recently covered Zoroark EX, which is kind of on the edges of this chart. As you can see, it's like down here in the B tier, and that has 250-ish top 16, so Bellibolt is way behind that, and Dragapult is a deck that has over 1,000 top 16 appearances, so Bellibolt is way behind, but it is being played. It doesn't have any wins, but it does have a number of top 16s and top 8 finishes as well, so some players are seeing a bit of success with it, but they're not necessarily dominating tournaments or anything like that. And right now, Bellibolt very much feels like a rogue tier deck until it's able to either get more support from newer cards or players crack the code with the existing card pool and find some busted combo that we just don't know about yet. Let's start with this top 8 list that is as vanilla as it gets. In terms of Pokemon, it is just the Iono Pokemon. 4-3 of the Bellibolt line, a thick 3-3 line for the Kilowattrel, a couple of Voltorbs in here as our single prize attacker, and then the trainer assortment here is pretty straightforward. We've seen most of these cards before. We do see a little bit of Earthen Vessel to get the energy out of the deck, and then Superior Energy Retrieval to get it back from the discard pile. Honestly, I think I would have put more Earthen Vessels in here to really take advantage of the Bellibolt ability, but yeah, most of the decks I saw didn't run for Earthen Vessel, which is fine, and they've been able to get top 8 in this tournament still. The only card I really wanted to call attention to here, besides the fact that, oh yeah, one thing, 17 energy. This deck relies heavily on having a ton of energy, so 17 energy in this deck. And the one new card I wanted to highlight here that we haven't talked about already is Brock's Scouting, and this has 2 effects, and you get to choose one of them. You can either grab 2 basic Pokemon or grab an evolution Pokemon, and this does serve a couple of purposes. We are running a number of evolution Pokemon in the deck and a number of basics as well, so whether you are getting your Tadbulbs and your Wattrels, or you're grabbing a Kilowattrel or a Bellibolt, you are getting benefits of grabbing those Pokemon out of your deck. And yes, you could be playing stuff like Ultra Ball and Nest Ball, and those are good too, but Brock Scouting does also give you an option to grab those Pokemon if Badoo is item locking you like crazy. So having Brock as a plan B in that scenario against Badoo, which is very popular right now, is a nice touch. The ace spec of choice here is Unfair Stamp, where if one of your Pokemon was knocked out on a previous turn, both players shuffle their hands into their deck, you draw 5, they draw 2, giving you a bit of a hand advantage here, giving you some fresh cards. And then on top of that, you also have the Kilowattrel to draw even more cards, potentially giving you even more of a card advantage. The second variation on Iono's Bellibolt is largely the same. The Pokemon lineup is the same, although we take out one Tadbulb and we add in a Klefki. And Klefki's got that Mischievous Lock ability where as long as this Pokemon's in the active spot, basic Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponents have no abilities except for Mischievous Lock. This can be very annoying for those basic decks to set up, especially the Terra box with the Clefairy and the Teal Mask Ogerpon that's been going crazy in Japan and is likely to be a top deck out here as well. Klefki kind of shuts all of that down while also giving you time to set up because all of your abilities are tied to evolution Pokemon. The ace spec of choice here is Max Rod. This is the newest and probably the last ace spec we're going to get in the Scarlet and Violet era. And this lets you put 5 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards from your discard pile into your hand, and having that flexibility of grabbing energy and Pokemon is very nice, especially since you could use this with Bellibolt in play, grab all 5 energy and then just load them in play and get yourself an attacker rolling very quickly. And I do like how well this card synergizes with the deck's overall game plan, so love this inclusion here. One more of the vanilla Bellibolt decks that we will look at today. They're all pretty similar with some minor adjustments, and this one has one minor addition of Badu. Yes, the most infamous baby Pokemon in the format right now. It's here for that Itchy Pollen attack where for no energy, you only do 10 damage, but you item lock your opponent on their following turn, giving you more time to set up. The other way to play Bellibolt is with Raging Bolt, and this variation of the deck has seen some success, though the Teal Mask Ogerpon version of Raging Bolt is definitely more popular and more successful. But if you want to try something different with your Raging Bolt, this is definitely something to check out. The big difference here, of course, is Raging Bolt EX, which takes the place of the Voltorb, where that Bellowing Thunder attack does 70 damage for each energy you discard off of any of your Pokemon. And this makes a lot of sense within the context of Bellibolt, because Bellibolt can load a ton of lightning energy on the board, and then Raging Bolt can just discard all of it in one go, or as much as you need. And of course, we still have Sada's Vitality in here, lots of Earthen Vessels, and then a couple of energy retrievals as well, on top of the Levincia Stadium to get that lightning energy back. One thing I noticed about the vanilla versions of the deck is they didn't run any support EX Pokemon like a Squawkabilly or a Pheasantipity EX, and these are more commonplace in the Raging Bolt variants. Squawkabilly lets you discard your hand on the first turn of the game and draw 6 cards, and that can be a great way of getting your setup pieces and potentially some energy in the discard pile that you can recover more easily with Levincia or Superior Energy Retrieval. And then Pheasantipity EX is just one of the best Pokemon in the game, allowing you to draw 3 cards if one of your Pokemon was knocked out on the previous turn. The A-Spec of choice in this particular build is Legacy Energy, which seems a little odd for Raging Bolt or for Bellibolt, but its benefits are pretty clear. The Pokemon this is attached to drops 1 less prize when it is knocked out, giving you at least 1 extra turn to play in the game. So Legacy Energy, pretty nice touch here. I don't know if that would be my way of playing this deck, but Legacy Energy's benefits are pretty clear. The second take on Raging Bolt with Bellibolt includes 1 copy of the Voltorb, and this is something that we didn't see in the first list, and not every Raging Bolt Bellibolt list includes the Voltorb, but I do like it as a single prize option that can potentially scale up to take out multi-prize targets. The most interesting part of this list, though, is that there's only 1 copy of Sada's Vitality in here, which personally freaks me out. If I'm playing Raging Bolt, I want 4 copies of Sada's Vitality in there no matter what, but this deck only has 1 copy and instead relies on Energy Switch, which allows you to move energy from one of your Pokemon to another one. And so the kind of thinking here is you get Sada's Vitality out of there and you rely on Energy Switch to move the energy onto your Raging Bolt. So you're moving that lightning energy from a Bellibolt or something else onto your Raging Bolt. And that's an interesting play. I do like the fact that playing less Sada's Vitality gives you more opportunities to play cards like Iono or Boss's Orders, because this is an item instead of a supporter. Can we just play like 4 Sada's Vitality with like 1 or 2 energy switches? I kind of like that combination. Going all in, almost all in on the energy switch freaks me out, but I'm also saying this as someone who hasn't played the deck yet, but I do love the creative thinking on this particular build. Prime Catcher is the A-Spec of choice here, where you force your opponent to put one of their bench Pokemon into the active spot, and then you put one of your bench Pokemon into the active spot. This could be another Raging Bolt. Maybe it's your opportunity to bring that Voltorb in, so it can be a single prizer taking out a multi-prizer. Whatever the case might be, Prime Catcher is the best A-Spec in the game, and it's going to be good in any deck you put it in. This final variation of Raging Bolt with Bellibolt includes one of my favorite Scarlet and Violet era Pokemon, Miraidon EX. Theoretically, yes, you could use this as an attacker with some combination of Energy Switch and Bellibolt accelerating energy, but it's primarily used here for its tandem unit ability, allowing you to bench 2 basic lightning Pokemon from your deck, making it easier to set up those Wattrels and Kilowattrels. I will admit, I thought I would see more Miraidon in Bellibolt lists than I have, but there are a couple that are using it, and it's nice to see this Pokemon, especially since in post-rotation times, Miraidon as its own deck has very much struggled. It is not doing very well, having lost Raikou and Raichu as attackers. I do think that Miraidon will eventually find its way, whether it's as its own deck or supporting some other deck like it's doing here. Miraidon just feels too good to be out of the meta for too long. It feels like as soon as the Pokemon Company puts out like a real lightning attacker, we're gonna be okay with Miraidon again. But for now, it has a support role in this deck here as an option. Over time, Secret Box has proven itself to be one of the best ace specs in the game. You discard 3 cards and you just grab a tool, a stadium, a supporter, and an item card. Insane amount of value, getting you a lot of pieces to help you set up or close out a game. Technical Machine Evolution is a great option here, especially since this deck isn't really built for turn 1 going second attacks. Like, yes, you could Sawdust Vitality and swing for upwards of 210 damage with the Raging Bolt turn 1, but in a scenario where you're not able to do that, you can use TM Evo instead in order to get your Bellibolt and Kilowattrel online. There we go. That is a look at Iono's Bellibolt EX in the Journey Together format. This video is a little shorter than the other ones because unfortunately this deck is not doing so hot in Japan and there aren't that many variations to cover, but I did want to cover it because it is one of the big new decks coming out of Journey Together, and I know there's going to be some interest for people that are curious about this archetype, especially the variation that plays Raging Bolt. I don't think it's fully cooked yet, and I do think that they kind of danced around having a solid attacker in the mix. So like Bellibolt is kind of a cool specific attacker in certain situations. Voltorb can be good in certain situations, but they just don't have that bread and butter attacker right now. Even when you bolt Raging Bolt in here, it's still not quite where I would want it to be a competitive deck. But as a rogue tier option for the time being, I think it's solid, and we'll see if it gets the support it needs to move its way up the charts. But for now, I gotta get going. Thank you so much for watching. You can find me on all the things: YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at InThirdPerson. You can find me on Twitch at InThirdPerson, where I stream the Pokemon trading card game every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And check out the website, InThirdPerson.com, for more articles and videos on video games, board games, and other nerdy pursuits. One last thing, I just had this idea while I was recording this. I think by the time you watch this video, I should have a playlist of all of the post-rotation previews I've done for this upcoming season. So if you've missed any of the other previews I've done, I've covered pretty much every meta relevant deck that in the upcoming season, and I've made videos for those. So I will compile them all into one playlist. So go back to the YouTube channel and look for that section of that playlist when you can watch all of them if you missed any of them. We've covered Dragapult, Raging Bolt, Charizard, Gardevoir, Goldengo, like all of the big ones I have covered so far. And we've even did a video on like the decks that we currently have that are not doing so well post-rotation, like a Miraidon or a Roaring Moon, Chen Pao, and so on. So all of the post-rotation stuff is there in case you've missed any of it. And yeah, thank you to everybody that has enjoyed that content leading up to this point. I'm really excited for rotation and playing the new era of the Pokemon trading card game in a couple of days. All right, I got to get out of here. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.